Welcome to Type Tune Tint. I'm Tom Kranz. Music is an integral part of podcasts, like the music you're hearing right now. I've used countless music tracks in podcast episodes and videos from a broad category called royalty-free music. Where do these tunes and music beds come from? Today we find out from Evan Oxhorn, a prolific home studio musician who has recorded hundreds of tracks and sold them. He is in fact an expert on being your own music producer, everything from writing, recording, and marketing your homemade tracks. You're listening to one of Evan's compositions right now, titled, appropriately, Confessions. And I'm joined by Evan Oxhorn, the composer, producer, performer, and recorder, recording engineer of the song we just opened with called Confessions. Evan joins us from his palatial estate in Huntington Beach, California. How are you, Evan?
Doing really well. Thanks for having me here today.
Good. You're all perky and everything, although I'm guessing you just got home from work pretty much, right?
Yeah, I work remotely, Tom. So I have been just did a few stretches and now I'm ready to go.
So you work from home?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll stop
fly
feeling
to
sorry
the
for
office.
you then. That's awesome. So here's why we're interviewing Evan today, folks. I went through the long version with Evan just now. I'll go through the short version for you. If you do podcasts and you do short videos, at some point you're going to want to use music because you just have to use music. And I learned quite a while ago, quite a few years ago, and I hope those of you out there who do videos and do stuff for YouTube have learned that you can't just rip off commercial music and put it in your videos, because those tunes are now encoded to the point where YouTube may not, number one, accept your upload, or number two, may wipe out the audio totally on your video. So you have to find what's called royalty-free music, which means going to one of 1 gazillion sites that sells little pieces of music. And I discovered one. There's a million of them. I happen to use one called Sound Dogs, but Evan is partial to Pond 5, and we'll talk more about that. But you have to find little pieces of music that are original, but they're written and performed by guys like Evan, who sits, I'm guessing, in your den, living room, bedroom, basement,
Um,
dungeon.
yeah, it's a little bit of everything. I'll turn off the blur if I can figure that out for a second. You can see all the soundproofing.
Okay, so
Um,
there you go. All right, so this is your
yeah, so
bedroom or your living room, or
this is my studio / office.
gotcha. But this is you're
Yeah,
at home, right?
yeah.
Right.
So
And so Evan
soundproofing
is one of
everywhere.
a legion of people out there who creates music with a combination of real instruments, synthetic instruments, synthesized, digitized, computerized, and then mixed, remixed, maybe vocal, maybe not. And it's like a miracle of the 21st century. You got this really full-bodied tune, great music that sounds like it could be an orchestra, and it's all created in a couple of little boxes in Evan's bedroom / studio. Let's start first of all with how many of these tunes, and we're going to play a couple more of these tunes. How many of these songs or tunes or music beds have you written, do you think? And over what period of time?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know, but I would say well over 400. I wrote my first song probably in second or third grade with a friend. We called it Gerbils Like to Fly. And I've pretty much been hooked on recording since then. It was a really primitive sort of computer system that he had. Then later on, I got a little 4-track tape cassette in high school and would record ditties in that. And then really got into stock music more seriously about 10 years ago. Time's a little squishy with the pandemic, but I think it was probably about 10 years ago that I really started looking into stock music seriously. And in that time, I've probably recorded about 400 songs.
But you started life as a musician, right?
Yeah, I've always, my parents put me in piano lessons and I enjoyed learning to play songs, but I enjoyed coming up with songs a lot more than I did
So did you play in a band?
memorizing. Yeah, I've pretty much been in a band since I was 14, maybe. In high school, pretty much all of high school, all of college, and then for many of the years after college. But unfortunately, that was one of those things with the pandemic. sort of brought to an end, and then
Yeah, no
life got in
kidding.
the way.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
I've interviewed a couple other musicians and they all have the same story, and it's a shame. But all right, so here's a picture of you from your website. Is that you're playing a bass here?
Mhm.
When was this and what was this?
That was probably 2015. With my band, we were playing at a bar restaurant in DC called Acre 121. It was a lot of fun. We usually packed that place, and people seemed to really enjoy themselves. That was just a cover band, though, so we weren't doing originals. Um, and that's sort of an interesting thing. Like some people maybe approach stock music from the perspective of doing covers of famous songs as opposed to doing their original songs. There's a lot more hoops you have to jump through in terms of copyright to do that,
To
to
do
do
covers.
covers.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. You have
Whereas
to get
if you write
permission
your
basically to
originals,
cover it, right?
yeah. And you also then whatever you get paid is way less because you're not the
Oh,
songwriter.
sure.
Um, so I've basically just stuck to originals for music licensing. But playing live in a cover band's a lot of fun because everybody knows the songs as opposed to and gets excited about the songs if you play them well. As opposed to being in an original band where nobody's ever heard the song and your songs need to be really, really good to get people's attention.
All right. Well, we're going to play a couple of your original tunes here, and couple of them are great, I think. So people are going to be
Thank you,
exposed
Tom.
to them anyway. But in going over your website, and tell us, let's mention your website several times here. What is it?
Stockmusicmusician.com. So STOCK music musician.
And this is the place to go. It's got every possible thing you could possibly want to know about everything from home recording, equipment to use for home recording, how to maximize and optimize your recordings, things like how to use a mixer, the right microphones, and then the whole ball of wax of getting into licensing your music, right? Licensing it,
Uh,
getting it sold, getting it listened
yep.
to. And I guess like me, I got into writing because I love writing and I've been writing since high school. And I was in the news business for a really long time. And when I left the news business, I finally was able to write what I wanted to write, right?
Yeah.
So I never really did it to become like rich. And I'm always joking with my wife that this book is not going to get me an interview with Hoda on the Today Show, but I'm going to enjoy doing it. And I do. And so I put them on Amazon and, my friends and family, after my friends and family read the book and buy it, okay, I've sold 60 books. Now what? Now I got to write another one. So I do it for love and I do it because I want to, but I do it and it's a creative outlet for you. You have a job as an attorney, but
Yeah.
this is your creative outlet, right?
Yes.
So
Yes. So,
how long have you been a lawyer and how did those two live together?
well, I became a lawyer in 2012. And I had been in bands up until then, but I started working for the federal government as a government lawyer. And the upside of that was that it was mostly a 40-hour work week because
Mm,
it was the government. And we had what they would call a condensed work schedule. So essentially, I'd work longer days, but have every other Friday off. And that little bit of spare time on my Fridays was really, you know, the time I would use to finish my songs, to produce them. Uh, on a regular work week, I could come home from work and, play guitar for like 10 minutes and have an idea, hit record. And then by the time the next Friday came around, I was really excited to sit down and finish out that idea. And so I just did that for years and years at a time. The Like you said though about writing, there was certainly a period where I was not writing stock music because I enjoyed it, but I was just, like, oh, this is gonna sell, this is gonna sell. So let me just
mm.
sit down and do 10 versions of Old Lang Syne or something, like cheesy techno version, cheesy hip hop version. And they sell, but that was not inspiring. And that's not why I got into doing it. I got into it to as a creative outlet to actually have my music be heard by people as opposed to just sitting on my hard drive collecting dust,
Got it.
which was unfortunately the direction I saw it going.
Well, you're not collecting dust now. I'm going to queue up, as I told you before, I'm going to queue up a song right now. This track is called Enter the Matrix. It's a little creepy and it's kind of dark. And the reason I'm playing this is because this shows kind of the diversity of the different music that you offer and that you have to do, I guess, to be successful. You can't just do rock and roll. You can't just do your acoustic guitar. You have to really offer a whole bunch. I mean, on your you do things like you do movie themes, you do country, you do classical, you do Christmas tunes, you do funk, you do hip hop.
What I like about it is I'm just following my interest when I sit down to record almost all of the time. Now,
Yeah.
like I said, sometimes I'm like, oh, Christmas is coming up. Let me record a bad version of a bunch of classic Christmas songs, which are not covers because they're in the public domain. And
Ah,
so
right.
you don't need to worry about all those complications.
Yeah, cool.
But normally, yeah, I'll sit down with my guitar and start playing, and whatever starts coming out, or I'll sit down with a keyboard and find a sound I like. And depending on my mood, it might be sad, it might be funky, it might be rock, it could be anything in between. And that's kind of what's fun, is just following where the sounds take you.
Do you play live instruments or computer generated or both?
Uh, Both. It really depends on the song. I'm able to play guitar and bass pretty well. Sometimes even good, but depends on the week. I can play keyboard not so well. I mean, I took lessons for 10, 15 years. These days, it's not beautiful, but you can fix it all in the recording.
Yeah.
So I will play a lot of what they call in the box, which is where all the sounds are being generated in your computer, but you're controlling them through your keyboard. And then you can go in and rearrange the notes if you flubbed something, or if you just don't like how it sounds.
You're not only are you doing music that you like doing, but you're getting paid for it.
Yeah.
So what you say on your website is, and I've heard you talk about different kinds of numbers. These tunes. I mean, I'm guessing these tunes probably do they go for like what, somewhere between $50 and $100? Do you get $200 for a song, or what? What?
No, I wish back 10 years, well, not 10 years ago, but when I first started, there was a higher royalty rate. But as this genre has proliferated across the internet, you get the the libraries themselves have cut the royalties that they give you for a sale of a song. But let's say my song is priced at $40. I think I get 40% of that. So
Okay.
about $10. That would be like the standard license. Lots of people do buy more expensive licenses. So
Okay.
maybe they need it for a bigger audience. So they might buy $100 license or something. So you get paid for when somebody first initially purchases your song to use it. But then if your song is broadcast on TV, for example, you also get what's called a performance royalty.
Mhm.
And so every time it's shown on a TV, you can get residuals that sort of build up and build up. And so, I've had songs that have paid like $2,000 from being placed on TV.
Oh, sweet.
Um, so yeah, it's all over the place. And that the TV royalties lag the sort of the library royalties by like a couple of years. So it's hard, and they're quarterly versus monthly, and then there's other royalties. It's really hard to say exactly how much you got paid from a song that you sold at a specific time, because you can never really directly attribute one thing to the other.
We're going to take just a quick break here for me to shamelessly promote my new book called Wreck and Return. But going into that break, we're going to play a song that you wrote and you performed on. It's called For So Long. Folks, this is a great song. This is like a standalone song. I wouldn't use this as a music bed because the vocal's great. Evan does everything on this except the vocal. The vocal is somebody else. But you wrote it, you performed it, you recorded it, and it seems to be right around the sweet spot of 2 minutes long, which seems to be like an average of many of your tunes here. So without further ado, we'll be back shortly. But first, sit back and listen to the tune For So Long.
and stumbled for so long. I waited till I could reach out and touch you. Wherever I went, my eyes looked out for you, searching and waiting and hungering for you. There you were, across the room. We drank, we danced, made plans to we a month, a year, two, we fell in love, strangers across the room. For so long I've been with you through all life's troubles. For so long I felt at peace just looking at you. Wherever we go, can't take my eyes off you. By now I'm hopelessly in love with you. For so long I'll be with you forever, darling. For so long I'll be with you, my one and only. For so long.
More with Evan Oxhorn in just a moment. This is Type Tune Tint. I'm Tom Kranz here in beautiful Fanwood, New Jersey. We just heard a little ditty that is kind of like, he calls it jazz lounge, but I find that in many of Evan's tunes, the song is more a description, which is very key when you're, a client going to search for music. You want for something that is like a jazzy kind of song. You want something that's contemplative. You want something that's bouncy, happy, sad, melancholy. So I guess a key is for each song, you really have to kind of fit it into a very tight little category, correct?
That is so true, Tom. It's, I would think like the worst song I could imagine for music licensing would be like A Day in the Life by the Beatles, where you've got an A part that's completely different from
Yeah.
a B part, which is completely different from a chaotic ending. You really want a very clear style and mood, and it has to be consistent throughout the song, because you want the the potential client to know exactly what they're getting the minute they hit play. And like so many things, they say you've only got 5 seconds or something to capture somebody's attention.
Yeah, I
The
give
intro
myself
of your
maybe
song.
15, right?
Well, you're a
So
very
those little
patient man.
previews, you click on those little previews, and a lot of times, I mean, I know right away if this is the song that I'm going to use for
Yep.
this podcast episode or whatnot. And by right away, I mean literally 10 to 15 seconds. And after that, and then maybe sometimes I'll go right to the very end. I want to hear how the song ends as well. But
Yep.
yeah, doesn't that drive you crazy though, to know that all these people are out there, they're hearing like, the first 8 bars of a song, and then they're going on to the next one. I guess not, obviously, if you're doing it.
Not really. I mean,
Right.
those are thousands of people that would have never heard
That's true.
a second of my music beforehand. So, and it's just the pressure, or, it's like you were talking about with writing your books, there's sort of a structure to it, an outline when I'm trying to approach these songs. Like you noticed 2 minutes. Well, I know in that 2 minutes, kind of structurally what I want to do. It'll be a really captivating quick intro, and then a building intro into the verse, then a chorus, then a verse that's a little bit of a breakdown from the first verse. So you've got sort of a different area or vibe, and then a chorus that's even bigger than the first chorus that gets louder and louder as it builds up. And then, as you noted, a really nice ending that resolves the song consistent with sort of the style and the vibe of the song. And what I found is the biggest way you can go wrong is if what you deliver throughout that song isn't consistent. You don't want to trick somebody into getting a song that's not a good fit for them.
Yeah, it's amazing the parallels between doing that and writing a novel, because, if you're writing a 200 page or 50 to 70,000 word novel, at least for me, if that story goes off in too many directions, you really lose the reader. You just do, because people don't want to read in the first place. You got to catch them. It's like listening to music. If you don't catch them into the first 10 pages, you have to leave them with a good beginning and a good end. I learned that actually in TV news. You always have to save something for the end. So it's a process. Where has your biggest exposure gotten? Like, what are some of your biggest, most successful tunes?
So financially, my biggest, most successful tune is sort of this funky track, but I have no idea what it was played on. I just got a royalty statement from Romania that was $2,000 one quarter and like $700 or $500 the next quarter.
But you
It
have no
doesn't say
idea
what
how
show.
it was used or where it was used.
Nope.
You
And
probably don't care. Maybe you do. I don't know.
A little bit,
Yeah.
because that's definitely, in terms of scale, like probably 10x my next best one.
Global, man.
Yeah. So I don't know. It must have been like the theme song for a show is all I can figure. But a lot of my music is on shows like The Real Housewives of the Potomac, 90 Day Fiancé,
These are like
Summer
the tracks that maybe go in and out of breaks, that kind of stuff.
Some of those, but also if you really pay attention to one of those reality shows, essentially every single moment has music under it.
Okay.
And it's sort of a signpost for the emotion that or the energy of the scene. And then they'll have these kind of like boom, 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 boom. And they cut to somebody's reaction. And then it's all that sort of thing. So you have to build in these little moments of drama into your songs that are being used for series like that, so that they can pick and choose for those reactions.
So for a series like that, do they actually contact you and say, can you do X, Y, and Z for me? Or does it just, again, show up in a statement one day?
So for those shows, I work with what they would call an exclusive library, as opposed to sort of Pond 5, which is just sort of a broad library where anybody can submit music. And so you sort of develop this relationship with the library over time, and they begin to trust you to make certain things for their clients. And so their clients might reach out to them with 3 or 4 songs they like that maybe they can't get the rights to. So they might reach out with a Uptown Funk or something, and they say, we can't get Uptown Funk, but could we get 10 tracks that sort of sound like that? And so they'll farm that out to 3 or 4 composers that work with the library. And so, can you each come up with like 4 or 5 tracks in 3 weeks? And so you kind of come up with your own interpretation of that and submit it to the library, knowing sort of what type of show it's going to be on. You also make a few different choices than you might do if you were more just broadly and generically making stock music.
So when my wife and I are watching like House Hunters, which we watch, and those kind of home shows, all those shows have the same, there's always music going on there someplace. That's like what you do, basically. That's the kind of music.
That's exactly. Yeah. So anytime if you, and this is how I really annoy my wife, is when we're watching shows like that, I'll stop and be like, oh, that was a really good piece of stock music in the background, or that was a terrible choice. Why are they doing that?
So I must know. So you're married, you share an abode there, right? Does she, you're able to coexist with your studio and your music and whatever noise you're making?
I got a door. It definitely helped when I got a door. Because especially in the mixing process, which is sort of one of the later phases of music creation, when you're trying to get all the sounds balanced and clean and clear, you have to listen to the same section of the song potentially on
Oh,
repeat
a million
for an
times.
hour.
Oh yeah,
And you
that
can
would drive me
imagine that could
crazy.
be annoying to people.
Yeah.
I love
Really?
it, but
Yeah. I guess you do what you have to do.
absolutely. And you find a workflow that, part of the music, the type of music you make is the type of music that you have a workflow to make. So for a long time, I was working out of the living room and there the acoustics were terrible. And I really couldn't record an acoustic guitar that sounded like anything other than something recorded in a shoebox with a
Mm.
potato, And so when I got some better soundproofing, uh, then I was able to actually start recording acoustic guitar tracks in a way that was useful to me. So there's so much interplay between what you can do and what you want to do, and then also just a little bit what comes easy to you. Everybody's going to have different uh, instruments that they're better at or
Mhm.
worse at, and the order that you record the instruments is absolutely going to influence what you lay on top of that, and then what you lay on top of that. Sort of in the same way that when a bunch of musicians are in a room together, they might influence each other and play off of each other. You're still going to play off of yourself, um, even if you think you're playing something consistently. There's so much nuance to music that you don't even realize. Like, oh, I've gotten louder here,
Mm.
so I guess I got to do that on all the instrument takes I'm playing after that. Otherwise, it's not going to feel organic.
Gotcha. One of my big problems as a drummer, and this is really terrible to say, was keeping steady time. So I would always speed up.
Yeah,
And then one day, a drummer, for a while, I was going to the PASIC convention. That's the Percussion Arts Society. They have a convention every year. I went with my friend because it was fun. And the drummer up there said that he put a metronome on uh, Brown Sugar, the Rolling Stones tune. And if you
yeah,
listen to it, he speeds up. Charlie Watts speeds. That song
yeah.
is significantly faster at the end than it was at the beginning. And that just cracked me up. It's like, really?
There's this technical term they can use. They can do with audio, basically, where they call it quantizing, and
Mm-hmm.
essentially they move everything onto the 1, 2, 3, 4 grid from where it might have been, and they
So
do it to like,
it makes the time correct, basically.
yes, it makes the time correct to a metronome as
Yeah.
opposed to the way it might be felt and perceived by a musician. And they've done it where they like isolate, the drums and everything and do it on each track. And like John Bonham's drums sound so awful quantized and to the beat. And yet when you listen to Led Zeppelin in the context of the band, it's the baddest, nastiest
Yeah.
thing you could ever imagine. And it's not on time at all, but it is perfectly in the pocket.
Yeah, amazing. All right, so here's what I do sometimes. I do this in the privacy of my home, usually 3 a.m. in bed, staring in the dark at my ceiling. And I told you that I'm not in this for like fame and glory and money. However, I do harbor this fantasy that one day somebody somewhere, some Netflix producer or some celebrity who likes science fiction is going to like one of my two science fiction novels. Or another EMT. I was also an EMT for a while. That's what
Oh
I based
wow.
my latest book on, my latest novel on, is going to read this and say, wow, that's going to make a great movie or a great. I harbor that fantasy that one day I'll be discovered. Do you harbor that fantasy?
To be honest, not really.
Ah, damn it.
I I pretty much even in bands I usually played bass. So I pretty much got comfortable with the idea of not being up front from
Like
the
being in the
beginning.
background.
Uh,
Yeah.
being in the background, yeah. And to me, that's not why I have to make music. Whether or not I could record it, I would still make music. Um, but what I just want is to people to kind of hear my music, whether or not they know that it's me or they even know that there's music playing. You can listen to you can watch house centers and not really even realize all the music going on in the background. But
Right.
it's part of the storytelling that the producers are doing, and it's just cool to be part of all of that.
So you don't think at some point down the road you might wake up one day and say, you know, I do love making music, but I want to perform again. Do you think that day will ever come?
Yeah, I actually feel that way right now. It's not an either or. I would still probably record music. I was doing it when I was still recording a lot when I was in the band. And in some ways, it was easier because I was better. Like my chops were just a lot better practicing with the band. So things that take 4 takes,
Hmm.
songs that take 4 or 5 takes to record now, I could have gotten down in 1 take. But I moved to California last summer, so I haven't really had a chance to get to get a band together. But it's definitely something, hopefully in the next 6 months or something, I'll start exploring pretty seriously, because
Cool.
it is a lot of fun to play. And
Yeah.
that's, that said, now that I'm in my 40s, playing gigs that start at 12 o'clock and you don't get home from until 3 o'clock for, $25 and a beer, that doesn't sound as interesting to me anymore.
Miles Davis once said in an interview, making music was the most fun he ever had with his clothes on. And I would have to say that when I was playing, like with people, I played a show in Philadelphia once along at a community theater, and I played at a summer resort for a few summers. Definitely the most fun I've ever had. And when you play
Yeah.
with other musicians, even at that level, who feel you and who you feel, it's like you're kind of this unit that kind of defies verbal description. So I do wish you luck, and I hope you get to do that. We're going to close out with a song that you named "Don't Give Up." You told me you didn't remember this one, but you'll see it when we play it. It's categorized under your broad categories as fun, energetic, pop rock. So that covers quite a
A
spectrum,
lot.
but it really is a fun song. It's a great little rock song. I'm guessing the guitars are all you playing here. And this is a great way to
Yeah.
go out. Evan Oxhorn is this gentleman's name. And give us your website again.
Talkmusicmusician.com.
Right. And this is where you go to learn everything and anything about being a home musician, about being a one man or one woman band, as it were, and then how to license your music and how to sell it basically on one of these many sites out there that will actually buy your 2 minutes worth of musings, because maybe it's just the perfect piece of music for a podcast or a YouTube video, or who knows, a Netflix show. Evan, I really appreciate you joining me. Don't work too hard as a lawyer, and keep on making music.
Thanks so much, Tom. I appreciate it.